Today on the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, we're talking about episode 3 of Loki, Lamentos. I said Lamentos. I meant to say Lamentos. It's Late Night Loki, everybody.
Yeah, it is.
Lamentos, fresh and full of life. Welcome to the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll, and we have two wonderful Stranded Panda co-hosts here tonight. We've got Brian V. Klein and J. Scotty St. Clair. How you guys doing today?
Tired, but here.
Yeah, that's true.
It is what it is. Late Night Loki. It is what it is.
Late Night Loki, baby. We're just hopping in to do a quick, 15-minute review of tonight's episode before we do our full review tomorrow. So, throw it at me. What'd you think, BBK?
I liked it. We talked about this. It has serious Doctor Who vibes to it.
100%.
Just the visual. I've seen that story before, and like we got to get to a certain point before the end of the world's coming, and just the way it was shot, and just the whole. I mean, I really enjoyed it. Plus, we got a couple nice reveals in this episode too about the future of the story going forward. So
yeah, I
dig it.
Absolutely love Doctor Who, but I gotta say, this gave me such serious Doctor Who vibes that it almost made me like, I love Doctor Who, but the show is a much lower budget thing to me than Loki should be, and this felt so much like a Doctor Who episode that it kind of made me feel, it felt undervalued somehow to me because it's so much like Doctor Who, and I love Doctor Who, but I guess
like your Doctor Who and your Marvel.
Well, it felt a little underwhelming compared to the first two episodes for me. The Doctor Who-iness of it all, like the special effects, the sort of bottle nature of the episode where it's just the two of them talking, and this like culture is going on in the background, but we don't really get to know anything about it. It just wasn't as inventive as the first two episodes, I felt like.
And there wasn't a big info dump in this episode either. Like you said, it was a bottle episode. There was a lot of just them finishing a mission that they created on their pretty much with their own actions in this episode. Yeah,
absolutely. What'd you think, Jay Scotty?
I was just going to say, I think you're just missing Miss Minutes as well as Mobius and Mobius, but I really enjoyed the episode. I definitely agree with the Doctor Who vibes. I thought there were a lot of various sci-fi vibes. I felt Inception vibes from the opening scene. And I just really liked it. It embraced the weird and the wonderful. I like getting the cosmic elements there through the visuals and the culture referring to, but it felt like, Guardians and Doctor Strange meets what we've seen so far from Loki. So I really enjoyed it.
I get that. I think maybe too, another reason that I'm a little down on this episode maybe is because I didn't buy their relationship yet, and I feel like this episode was supposed to make me buy the relationship. Like, they go through this little conversation, they talk, they have these sort of sweet moments and sentimental moments, they also hate each other throughout, and then they enter that door, and they go, we're just about to go into something really rough, I need to know, can I trust you? And he says,
you can and we do?
I do and you can, or something like
okay.
Or do we trust each other? And he says, we do and you can. And right. I was like, I don't know that I buy that from either of them yet.
No.
But I think we will. But I didn't think this episode accomplished that if that was the goal. And it was also very short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 10 minutes shorter than the other two.
Yeah. So I didn't think anything in the episode was bad. I don't know that it accomplished the goals that it maybe seemed to set out to do.
Interesting.
I don't know, but maybe not. Maybe that was the goal, was to make us think they can trust each other, and then one of them's going to betray the other one. Who knows?
There was times where it was, you thought that that Loki was going to, I mean, we'll just go out and call the female Loki Sylvie, or right. I mean, how many times did she say enchanted? I mean, they're almost throwing it in their face that it's the Enchantress, but we'll just call her Sylvie. So there's times where those two are interacting, and it's like they're gonna double cross each other, and it looks like they're going to, but it's part of the plan. I mean, that's Loki. This whole series has been, you think the double cross is happening, and it's not. He's actually doing it for himself, but it also seems like too the one part where he suggested to use the arc to get off, was almost like, was he doing it for self-preservation, or is he doing it because it almost seems like he's becoming that almost sympathetic character to where he's going to use it for himself, but he's also going to use it because these people weren't saved before and now they will. I mean, I still don't buy him as being that anti-hero type character, because this is still the 2012 variant of Loki from the Avengers. So
I agree. And I think like there's a moment where he says, "Oh, I have an idea to get us off here. Let's get a lot of people off with us." And it reminds me of Doctor Who again, where he's like, the best way to do this is to help a lot of people. And like, that's not Loki at this point yet. Like, he hasn't really turned that corner for me. And it feels like he's trying to do, there's a couple moments in this where he chooses to do the good thing or say the good thing or try to, and it's almost like they're forgetting this is 2012 Loki and not the one who's been through the experiences of 2022 Loki or whatever. Right.
But the thing is, their first option was to drain the power from the arc to power the device back up so they could just portal themselves out of there and then basically kill everyone anyway, because that was what the fixed point, going back to Doctor Who, that those people died anyway.
Sure.
So now that they were saved, it's a different thing. So, that's why we got to come back next week to see what happens.
Yeah. Our buddy Brad here from the Album Concept Hour podcast is in the chat, and he's saying a real exposition dump of an episode. And I would disagree with that. I feel like this episode, very little happened. They definitely like gave a few nuggets of information that were incredibly interesting, but mostly this to me was a character episode about the two of them and who they are and their differences. It's more of a character episode to me, but the exposition that was there was very interesting. And that the biggest one being that TVA agents are people, are humans, it seems, right?
They're variants of wherever they were, pulled from. So pretty much it almost seems like their sentence is to work for the TVA.
Right. So we discussed that exact thing on last night's feedback episode. That possibility. So that is pretty cool. We called that shit.
Called it.
And now if you think about it, I mean, we came to that because they were dropping all the information anyway, like him saying, "Oh, I was born, I've always been behind a desk." That's his earliest memory. Then you find out today that, Sylvie was able to go, but what she said, I had to go back hundreds of years. And I'm like, wait, hundreds of years? How old are these people? And then, wait, why does she have different memories? And that's when they said, oh, yeah, they're all variants. Boom. There we go.
They're all variants. That's super interesting. And now they don't know they're variants. And I think that's the key. So, like, I think the timekeepers are sketchy. Miss Minutes is sketchy because she is like some sort of propaganda arm of the timekeepers. But I don't think the TVA agents themselves are sketchy. I think they are like doing what they think is right. Oh, that's amazing. Brian just held up a Miss Minutes mouse pad. It's amazing. Yep. Where do you get these wonderful toys?
ShopDisney.com on this one. So I had some expiring dollars, so I'm like, I got to get it, $10. Anyways.
Nice. Yeah, I think that TVA agents, especially like, what is it, B-15, I think her name is, or whatever.
Hunter B-15.
Hunter B-15. Yeah. Like, she seems to have no care for variants, right? Like, she's like, no, just disappear them all. Like, they all need to be disintegrated, especially Loki. But what would that do to these people? And it seems to be like Mobius that we talked about last night. Mobius is one of the only ones who has sort of this affection for the variants and care for people that are about to die. Like, he has this affection for people that aren't necessarily part of the overall timekeepers plan. Like, he seems to care about people beyond just how they serve the timekeepers. And like, I wonder how it will change the TVA when they realize that they are the same as the people they're disintegrating. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Like, they think they're higher beings or they're servants of the timekeepers, and these guys are variants that need disposing of, but they're variants too.
And how many of the TVA are variants, though? It's like, is Ravana a variant? Are some of the higher ups, or is it just like the analysts and the Casey and those guys. I mean, how many of them are, and how many of them are the ones that? I mean, there had to be ones there beforehand that had handed out the judgment more than just Renslayer. You would think,
maybe,
or
I don't know, or the Timekeepers started this whole thing with a few variants, as we discussed. Like, this could be the original multiverse that they just like plucked people from and made them their like servants. After they won the war, they just like enslaved. All of the multiverse.
They're all like POWs or something.
Yeah.
That are, put to work but they have no memory of it.
And they've been there hundreds of years. It makes sense that they could be from the original multiverse war.
Yeah. I like it.
Very interesting.
Another theory we threw out there last night that I wanted to touch on. we came on a lot of theories on the feedback episode that I really enjoyed, was the idea, we joked about how did Lady Loki survive long enough to be Lady Loki? If she's a very that far of a variant, how did she survive? And I made a joke that she was Moses. Like, maybe it was a Moses situation that they like put her in a basket and shipped her off to apocalypses, and she had to run from apocalypse to apocalypse. That's how she grew up. I joked about that, but this episode, she said she barely remembers her mother, which means she left her mother at a very young age. They also said she's been running from them her whole life, which made me think that's like a pretty good chance that that's kind of what happened to her. Like, and she seems to know all the apocalypses. She said when they got to, I cannot remember the name of this planet.
Lamentos.
Yes. Lamentos Thresher. That's how I remember it. I got it. Lamentos. When they got there, she said, "You picked the very worst apocalypse on this pad. The very worst one." And which to me means she's been going through these apocalypses over and over, and she knows the ones that are good and bad, and the ones that are her favorites, or the ones that are the ones she avoids. Yeah. So maybe she's been apocalypse hopping for however long she's been alive.
Right, but it makes you think how she's been doing it. I mean, has she been this variant that's been doing it for hundreds of years, thousands of years? Who knows? Right. I mean, it's
as Guardians get old. Loki and Thor are pretty old themselves.
Totally right, fair. But so this has been a problem for the TVA for this long because they've never really explained how. I mean, one of the first scenes we see is that Goldman Sachs kid who was a time variant. Mm-hmm. Well, this is just a regular person. How do they get something that allows them to travel and mess with time?
You don't have to mess with time to be a variant. I think the only thing you have to do to become a variant is make a different decision.
Right.
Now, what causes you to make a different decision, I agree with you, that's a little dicey, but I guess the idea is that people have free will, but if someone makes a different decision than the timekeepers want them to, they reset them and make them do it again until it's the right decision. They're going to make both decisions is the idea. One version of them will make the right decision that is the sacred timeline, and another version of them just doesn't make the same decision, and they create a Nexus event.
And that also then reminds me of like the Doctor Who episode Turn Left, where instead of turning right, you turn left at one point and it changes the whole rest of your life.
Exactly.
Oh, yes. So, I know exactly which episode you're talking about there.
Well,
right? Yeah.
And that's the thing they say in the first episode of Loki is even if you're just late for a day of work, it can cause a Nexus event, Right. I don't think you don't have to mess with the time stream. Time travel does not have to be involved for it to create a variant. I don't think.
Yeah, I wouldn't lean into the time travel so much there. I think it's more like the butterfly effect. So if you think about what the timekeepers are having to do, every single thing that happens has rippling effects that are constantly, cascading out in a million different directions. And so I wonder how often they're having to constantly reevaluate what's happening, and maybe they've made a ruling at one point in time and then they go back and maybe a ruling has happened 15 different times to, 15 different outcomes because the timekeepers have decided it's ever changing and ever evolving.
Unless you're an Avenger.
Right.
If you're an Avenger, it's pretty much you can do whatever you want.
That's I suppose so.
That's what it was meant to be.
Well, I mean, we learned a lot about the TVA agents and the fact that they're variants, so we might get a lot of revelations about this sacred timeline. That's why
I think we will.
I wonder if it really is so sacred.
I don't think it is at all, and I've maintained this the whole time. I think the timekeepers are a malevolent force, or at least a selfish force. They won the war, and they are just holding onto their land. That's what all this is. and they're not allowing anyone else to rise against them.
I think the Sacred Timeline is going to be gone by the time this thing's all over, because otherwise the whole multiverse of madness doesn't seem like it's plausible, but it's just going to unravel. And I just want to see the next episode, if we go back to the TVA, how they're handling all the branches, because the last thing we saw there was just like chaos.
Right.
Yeah, I think that is another thing that bothered me. Like, that was a cliffhanger, and then they took an entire episode away from that cliffhanger. Like, I want to know what happened. Like, I don't ever like it when shows do that. They're like, watch, and they even showed it in the last time on. And that was the last thing you see is all these creeping timelines spreading out. And then it's like, and now the next episode of Loki where you won't find out anything about that. It's like, no, what are you doing to me?
And then you end this one on a cliffhanger too, with them being stranded on the planet. And it's like, okay, now we got two different. So the next episode, they're going back to the TVA. It'll be a Loki light episode. There's no Loki or Sylvie, so we don't find out about them. Actually, we don't, because next week's episode's called Vote Loki. So I'm sure you can't have a Loki's episode without having any Tom Hiddleston in it.
Well, but you could have a variant of Loki.
No, that's true.
It doesn't have to be this Loki, especially the Vote Loki. We've talked about it a lot. Like, we think that's a variant, but who knows? I really like the discussion of his mother in this. There's a line. Ooh. It reminded me of my mom a lot. One thing that my mom really always did was she made us kind of believe in ourselves and gave us confidence. And it's something I've been dealing with in therapy, and something I'm very thankful for. That, like, my mom, no matter what else happened in my family, my mom was just the person who was always our biggest cheerleader and made us believe we could do anything. And Loki said that this episode, and it really hit home for me. Like, the idea, she's like, you can do this one day, talking about the magic. And he's like, really? I don't think I can. And she's like, because you could do anything. And it's like, ooh, that's great. I loved it.
Gotta love moms like that.
Love it. Absolutely do.
Yeah. It was a really poignant moment. You talk about how this episode was very much character-based, and it really was getting these two Lokis to kind of trust each other. And whether or not that was effective or not, I would say that moment in particular was one of the biggest leaps forward in that regard.
Agreed. And, well, at least to me, that was an important moment for their characters, both of them. I still don't see how this experience made them trust each other. That's what I mean when I'm saying,
Totally. Yeah.
I still don't think they do. I think that it's building, because every moment they'd have, and I can't, like I said, we just watched this and I'm not remembering it in order, but you had that poignant moment, and then you cut to a scene with drunk Loki singing in the bar, and she's just like, now it's the tension's back again. So it's like it's a heartfelt moment, and then there's tension. Then he's sitting there singing about the Green Dragon again and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it's like,
good reference there. I like that. I was expecting a little bit. We got that opening scene where we saw Sylvie probing the TVA agent's memories via like dream. I thought in that sequence on the train, we were going to get the revelation that one of them was probing the other and trying to get information just, in Loki backstabbing fashion.
Right, what she was doing, that exposition of that, where it's like, I have to go back and ones that are the stronger minded, I have to make them see an illusion. I'm thinking, she's doing that to him right now. Right, yeah. And we're going to jump back and we're in the TVA or something, like hidden in the corner of the locker room or something while all hell's breaking loose. And it never, maybe that was the obvious thing to do, because when they mention it so much and then they're like, nope, we're going to make you think this, and it's not happening.
Yeah. I love that, and I don't think it's too late. Like, that could still be the resolution. So I love that idea. That's cool.
That's true.
I didn't think of it at all. I should have, but I didn't. Would have shocked me.
Your brain isn't always functioning the same way at 2 in the morning when we're watching it the first time. Second watch is always a lot better.
Yeah, we'll get a closer look tomorrow. Speaking of their mothers, I also just like the parallel of him talking about his mother and how much she meant to him, and then her not remembering her mother. There's just such a good, emotional pathos there when you've got someone who just never knew their mother, and listening to a different version of them that got to know their mother and how important their mother was to them. Like, that's good. That's good characterization stuff there. I liked it a lot. I like making the difference between them, Oh, Loki's bisexual.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yep. And I think we also found out, too, because a lot of people were asking about how Sylvie lost her horn on her helmet thingy, her tiara or whatever. And when she was using it as a weapon on the train, I'm like, well, that's probably how she broke off the one horn.
Right.
And then she lost it. She jumped out of the train, so it was on the train still. So I'm like, well, I guess we won't need that anymore. But at least I would think that answers that question.
Yeah, she uses it. It's weird that it's that like weak that she's fighting with it, and it would break that easy. But yeah,
she hit something so hard that it did it. So
yeah. Okay. Well, any other thoughts about this episode that the Oneer? I gotta throw out the Oneer.
Oh,
was
yeah,
absolutely
great call.
amazing.
Great call. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Highlighted the episode, I dare say.
Yeah, agreed. I'm really curious how they shot all that. Like somebody mentioned the what'd you call it? The
volume.
The volume, which is how they shot it.
I checked quick, and it says right now the first time they used the volume in the MCU was recording some scenes for Quantumania and for Love and Thunder.
Oh, okay.
It does have that look to it because pretty much what the volume is there's a lot of practical parts to it, but they're pretty much just in a gigantic. And if you want to know, on the Mandalorian season 1, there's one whole episode of the behind the scenes thing where they show how it works. So you're pretty much in this giant dome, and the whole ceiling and walls and everything are these LCD or LED screens put together. So you're actually looking in the environment. They shoot it so like when they're on Tatooine, you see it looks like you're on Tatooine. But then they also have practical like stuff that you're walking around. So it's not green screen, so you're interacting with stuff, but all the other environment makes it look like you were there.
Yeah, it gives the green screen depth, and it gives the actors something to play against. The thing about this that was really impressive is the scope of what you're looking at and how much they moved the camera to different angles and this sort of 360 degree view of the landscape. It was really, really cool and really well done. The Oneer in this episode. So I gotta mention that.
That's what the volume they said usually will do, because you have it all around you. So I mean, the sets are there, but the whole landscape. So they could have these shots where you don't have to do much in post other than like cut some of the actual physical portions of the volume that aren't part of the scene. You just got to cut that out, but they're showing it, and it's like it cuts so much time out because you're not having to do all this stuff after the fact, and you get something to visualize that you're actually there. So
yeah, that's really cool.
While we're just like taking advantage of the Twitch stream here, we did get this comment here where someone says, so how do we think they're going to be saved? I'm surprised Loki didn't try to call out Heimdall, or try to call out to Heimdall. I know he read about Ragnarok, but he doesn't know for sure he's dead. And then Brad brings up, wouldn't he be long dead? And we did get the confirmation that this took place in 2077.
Right. And this is James CO that wrote that in. That, and also, I think, doesn't Heimdall only have access to the Bifrost in the 9 realms?
Ooh, good point.
I think. I'm not totally sure about that.
Yeah, I think so. And we don't know where Lamentis technically is. I don't think it's part of the 9 realms.
Right. I don't think it's part of the 9 realms.
I looked it up, and it takes place in Kree space, so I think it's safe to say it's outside of the 9 realms. It's not. It's so funny that they had a moment in the season where Mobius says, "What about space? Why don't you go conquer space?
Be the Emperor of Space.
Not just the 9 realms, go to space," because that's the joke we've been making on the podcast. In space. Oh, it's so funny.
Another quick thing about this episode, and I'm going to get really down and geeky here. I was wondering, or I was waiting for, there would be a scene when the moon was collapsing or crashing onto the planet that Chewbacca was going to stop it and try to stop the planet, because that's in the expanded universe on the first book of the New Jedi Order, Vector Prime. That's how Chewbacca gets killed. He gets crushed by a moon, saving Anakin Solo, jumping off on the Falcon. So I'm like, that's where you get the moon crashing into the planet, killing a main character vibe from it.
That was one of the first times we saw how toxic the Star Wars fandom could be.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Ari Silvador got death threats for killing Chewbacca that way. Like, he died a hero's death. Come on. I mean, it was a long time ago, and it was the first major character that died like that. But anyways.
All right. Well, now that we're talking about Star Wars, it's time to go. Star Wars is my sports. Is all I'm saying. No, I'm just teasing.
That's your end point.
Yeah, sports is move on. Star Wars is let's get out of here. Just teasing. No, I like Star Wars, everybody. I just like to give everybody shit because I don't like it as much as everyone else does. thank you for joining us for Late Night Loki. We will be back. So if you're hearing this on Wednesday, tonight we are going to be doing a 5 o'clock live watch on Scener. The link will be in the show notes. It'll also be at mcucast.com or strandedpanda.com, whichever one you want to go to. And then we'll at 6 o'clock we'll be doing another podcast, a more in-depth discussion with Ashley Coffin, and Jeff will hopefully be there. And we'll be doing trivia, Marvel Cinematic Universe trivia right after with I think we're talking about Thor: The Dark World this week. We're doing kind of Loki related movies. So we do a focus movie every week. So that'll all be on Twitch, twitch.tv/strandedpandatv, starting at 5 o'clock Central. 6 o'clock Central on Twitch, 5 o'clock Central on Scener. You know what I mean.
Time is fluid.
If you
don't know when all this comes up and you want to be alerted in a way you can look at it without me trying to explain it on the podcast, you can go to strandedpanda.com and click on Join the Stranded Panda Army at the bottom. And you can join on our email list, basically. And we send out a weekly email, kind of talk about our live schedule. So you can come in, join the conversation. We love it. All right, guys, we will be back tomorrow. Peace.
Until next time, true believers.
Woo!
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, available everywhere you get podcasts, and now a video version streaming live on twitch.tv/strandedpandatv and available at youtube.com/strandedpanda. And if you'd like to learn more about all of our other podcasts, geeky projects, and ways to support the network, visit strandedpanda.com.